Hi, everybody. I'm here with the miserable liberal and Ron Placone. You can hear him. You can't see him.
Howdy, howdy.
Hello.
George Bush is selling a book. He's out doing a book tour. His book is it's honoring veterans. That's like the captain of the Titanic writing a book honoring the people who drowned on his ship. What? And then I don't get how veterans can stomach this guy. We all know now what happened. They lied us into a war. They said Iraq was a threat to the United States. Iraq. And we know that, we know from General Wesley Clark that they were going into, had nothing to do with anything. That this was their idea to remake the Middle East. The new American prospect for a new American century.
We're going to spread democracy since we've mastered ours.
We've mastered ours. We're going to bring... So they had a plan to invade Libya and Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan. Remember all those countries that General Wesley Clark said? They did it. So and it was a lie. They didn't go there to keep us safe for weapons of mass destruction. They lie. And George Bush is not unique in that. American governments lie all the time about war. So the Vietnam War, that was a Democrat, lied. And no one goes to prison for that. George Bush lied us into a fucking goddamn war. They ordered torture to cover it up. And nothing. So they asked him they're talking to George W. Bush. He's going to talk about freedom of the press. Here we go.
Even at the times where you were dealing with the worst criticism, where it must have been very difficult to hear and read some of the things that were being said by the press in this country, did you ever consider the media to be the enemy of...
Would have been nice if he had to read uncomfortable, mean stuff from a prosecutor. Wouldn't that have been better? He had to read it in the newspaper. He didn't have to read it in a court document, right? Where he's being prosecuted for war crimes. He didn't have to do that. He has to read it in a paper. That's okay then. I bet that stings a lot better. That's a nice sting. That's a good kind of tired. When you read bad things about you in the newspaper, instead of when you read bad things about you in a court document. Okay, here we go. Now, so this is them bringing on George W. Bush, who's saluting the soldiers who he's sent into a phony war to get killed and to kill other poor people for false pretenses. I don't know if there's anything worse in the world you could possibly do. That's literally killing babies. Babies were killed. Old people were killed. Women, but everybody was killed in that. A conservative estimate: 600,000 Iraqis killed.
Well, I mean, according to Ben Carson, you could pass healthcare legislation that gives 22 million people healthcare. But outside of that, I can't think of anything worse. And now he's brought around like he's not a war criminal, like he didn't order torture, like he didn't lie to the American people, like he didn't do a disservice to the soldiers he sent into an illegal war, phony. This is crazy. But they're asking him about the press.
You know what? I just do want to point out that it's interesting that it's a Today Show exclusive and that they title it President George W. Bush Speaks Out. You know, seriously, typically when somebody's speaking out, it's because they finally have come to terms and they're finally going to seek justice. That's kind of what I'm...
Like, he's not going to take it anymore. I'm speaking out. I'm finally saying something.
I was a really, really bad dude. I'm sorry.
There's a reason why I can't travel internationally.
But it is good to know that Matt Lauer during this interview can look really distinguished.
Yeah.
So I can take it, I can really believe him now.
I would like if Matt asked him, hey, why can't you travel internationally anymore?
What do we hear about you being a war criminal?
What's this
in
about
Europe?
you being a war criminal again?
American people.
I consider the media to be indispensable to democracy.
I mean, how are we supposed to invade Iraq unless we were able to manipulate the front page of the New York Times into printing lies about weapons of mass destruction? That came right from Dick Cheney's lips and passed no vetting. So above the fold, front page, the New York Times. I mean, that they're indistinguishable. We couldn't have had that war if it wasn't for CNN and the New York Times. They're indistinguishable.
If it wasn't for the media.
I'm sorry, I keep saying indistinguishable. They're indispensable. That's what I meant to say. They're indispensable. Not indistinguishable. Go ahead. Sorry, Ron.
No, they're indispensable because if it wasn't for the media, who would we have faxed our talking points to? There would have been nobody. The fax just would have went nowhere.
Who was going to print our lies about WMDs and that Iraq was a threat? They didn't even have a... Anyway, here we go.
We need an independent media to hold people like me to account. I mean...
If the independent media held people like you to account, you'd be in fucking jail. You'd be in prison because you're a war criminal.
Well, actually, the independent media does hold him to account. It's the corporate media that doesn't.
Yes.
That's why he's not.
The independent media, you are right, Ron.
Yeah.
The independent media certainly holds them to account, but it's the corporate media that gives them a total pass. Total. Okay.
Power can be very addictive, and it can be corrosive. And it's important for the...
And look at how it corroded my brain. Look at Dick Cheney. Doesn't even have a heart anymore. Corroded it right out. Yeah. That's like, how you take a tooth and you put it in a Coca-Cola? That's what's like putting Dick Cheney's heart in the Oval Office. That's what happened to it.
It's like when you hit an armadillo.
Yeah. Middle of the road, dead.
Media to... call to account people who abuse their power.
No, you guys weren't a call to account. Colin Powell went and lied to the UN. Complete false facts. Completely nothing ever happened to him. Nothing happened to you. Nothing happened to Dick Cheney. You guys ordered war crimes literally after an illegal war that you lied us into. How many more times can I say this?
They were like the OG of alternative facts. They were like, man, we were doing this before it was a genre.
Oh!
We pioneered this movement.
They're the ones who started preemptive war. Remember, that was the Bush doctrine, preemptive war, preemptive, which means I invaded and killed you because I thought you were going to invade and kill me later. You can't do that in your life. You can't be walking down the street and just punch a guy. What was that for? You look like you were going to hit me later. That's what he did. So that's okay. Here we go.
It'd be here or elsewhere. One of the things I spent a lot of time doing was trying to convince a person like Vladimir Putin, for example, to accept the notion of an independent press.
Right.
And
he said, if you're not going to have it in the United States, why would we have it in Russia? And I was like, that's a good point. That's a good point. Have you talked to Rupert Murdoch?
A real independent entrepreneur.
Running
a nice small business.
Small businessman, mom and pop, getting all the countries he has newspapers in to go to war.
It's kind of hard to tell others to have an independent free press when we're not willing to have one ourselves.
Oh, wait a second.
Oh my God.
Oopsie.
Did the truth just slipsy outsy? It's hard to tell other people to have an independent media. We don't have, what the F? And Matt Lauer doesn't follow up on that, by the way. He just keeps moving.
You mean he's not going to talk about Judith Miller?
I guess not.
They're just going to blame it on an acid flashback. That's what they did every time he missed.
Wouldn't it be great if Matt said that? Hey, if there was a media keeping you cold to account, you'd be in prison. He'll never say that. He'll never say that.
Mentioned Vladimir Putin. So many questions about the contacts between Trump associates during the campaign.
So that's what he went to. So he goes to that. So he says we don't have an independent media. Here's a guy who's part of the corporate bought media, ignores it, and this moves on. He doesn't go, hey, wait a minute, what do you mean by that? He doesn't say any of that, right? He just, let's move on to another fake news story.
I noticed you brought up Russia, which at this point is masturbation material for us, and so let's go there.
Okay, so that's Trump. I mean, that's George W. Bush on the free press.
It's almost...
We really need it to hold politicians to account. Because if we don't have a free press, you could have war criminals as your leaders that just walk scot-free. Hey, the next live Jimmy Dore show is March 4th. That's a Saturday. Get your tickets right below. The next one after that is March 20th. The shows sell out really fast, so get your tickets right now. Links right there.